saw the game 3 last round, and we saw basically he just became a ramp into Mist Cutter Hydra deck. So we're going to get to see how this plays out at least in game 1, where he doesn't have access to the Mist Cutters yet. Mono Blue is traditionally a deck that's very good against individually large creatures. You know, things like a red-green monsters deck can have a lot of trouble with Mono Blue. We'll see whether or not it actually can keep pace, though, with the synergy plays that Green-Black Dredge brings.
That is a Judge's Familiar to start things off for Carlson. So Brady immediately knows what he's up against based off of Island plus Judge's Familiar. He's going to play a Sylvan Caryatid off a Golgari Guildgate and a Forest. So see if he can get his dredging engine online as the bird does come across. It puts Brady down to 19. We'll see what Carlson's follow-up is going to be, assuming that he does have one.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how Carlson plays cards like Tidebinder Mage in this matchup. Traditionally, Mono Blue just plays it on turn 2 whether there's a target or not, but because Hal Brady's deck is so much about getting a large nemesis or a creature with Night Howler on it, in particular Night Howler, this is a card that Tidebinder Mage can be very effective against.
Well, Mr. Brady, taking a look at a couple cards in his hand, does have a copy of Nemesis Immortals over there right now. A little bit of time to get that deployed, but this dredge deck is very, very interesting. Again, Ari Lax, Conley Woods, the two players you think of that put this deck on the map. Lax losing his win and in match at Grand Prix Cincinnati. Looks like we've got a little bit of turnover action here with the Grizzly Salvage. You see 2 copies of Caryatid, Shadowborn Demon going to go to the grip, a lot Latrell, and it looks like a Gerard is going to go to the graveyard as well, so a little bit of value there.
Yeah, there's filling up the graveyard here, and it looks like Nick's, like I said, is no stranger to the matchup. Like I said, he was holding on to the Tidebinder Mage, Green-Black Dredge with no kill spells other than the one Shadowborn Demon.
And Nemesis Immortals comes down on the cheap, so that's going to come directly into play. It's a 5/5. Blood Rush can make it even a bit bigger. So a really good dredge there from Brady off of the Grizzly Salvage as Carlson, without a 2-drop, is going to play his 3rd land. Looks like he picked up a Syncopate for this turn, as I think he would have cast it last turn if he could have. He'll play Thassa, come in for 1, and work on getting that set up.
And we want to point out one of the cards, if you noticed it in Nick's hand. Nick is playing a 2 of Thassa's Rebuff in his deck. That's the 1 in blue spell that counters unless they pay mana equal to your devotion to blue. Certainly a main deckable counter spell. I think a spell we haven't seen too much of in Mono Blue.
Yeah, not a ton. You know, there are a lot of different counter spells that they can play between Syncopate and Dissolve, Essence Scatter, Negate, a lot of different options. People have not really moved towards Thassa's Rebuff just because there's a very real cost with getting that set up. Is now here's a Gerard after the attack for 5 Nemesis Immortals. So Brady's doing a beautiful job of getting his deck set up to do everything that it wants to do, as Carlson's going to scry here with Thassa, put that card on the bottom, take a draw, see if he can stabilize here because he's underneath a lot of pressure.
Yeah, Sylvan Caryatid has been so helpful for Brady this game. It's just he's been able to power out threats really faster than Nick can answer them. Nick does have Tidebinder Mage, but he knows that Brady is waiting with a Shadowborn Demon for if Nick plays the Tidebinder.
And there is the Tidebinder Mage, so that's going to come in. It can actually tap down something here. May choose a Nemesis of Mortals, and that's exactly what it's going to do. Of course, you do see Gerard on the screen right now. +1/+1 for each creature in your graveyard, so it's currently sitting at a 6/6. Nemesis of Mortals to draw here for Brady. But the other text is kind of the scary part. It can actually just throw creatures and deal a boatload of damage, and when there's Night Howler involved there, that's when things really get scary.
Yeah, and we do see, or we do know in Nick's hand that he has Thassa's Rebuff if Hal decides to go for that Shadowborn Demon here.
You see him pull that forward. You also see another copy of Nemesis Immortals here. So some options here for Brady. His deck actually working pretty well right now. Again, this isn't your traditional dredge deck. There are no, Golgari Grave Trolls or Stinkweed Imps or stuff like that, but it does use its graveyard as an extension of its hand, and Brady doing a nice job of that by making his threats cost a little bit less, as this looks like it is Thassa's Rebuff, and it will get the job done to take care of that, as Brady cannot pay the necessary 4 mana. You can follow this up with a Lotless Troll, though, and that's a pretty good turn.
Yeah, I think because of the Jared that's in play, Brady seems no need to actually free up his Nemesis by using Shadowborn Demon. He can actually just wait, monster his Nemesis Immortals, and then throw it at Nick for the remaining damage.
You saw Brady count his graveyard really quickly there, too. That's the nice thing about this deck. Gerard is really just something that really ties the room together. It comes back from the graveyard if you turn it over, and it allows you some reach instead of having to attack for all of the damage in this game. You saw Nemesis Immortals come in for some points of damage a little bit earlier. That did its work, and now it actually gets thrown at the opponent eventually. So there are some unique tools to this deck that no other deck actually has access to. There's a Nightveil Spectre to turn on Thassa.
Yeah, she's online, but Nick's going to have a difficult time really surviving to through this next attack.
Yeah, presumably, I think we're going to see a Blood Rush activation plus a toss here. Swamp is the draw here for Brady. He still has that Shadowborn Demon that he just hasn't needed to cast yet.
Well, he knows about Thassa's rebuff, so the question is whether or not he suspects, that Nick plays more than one of them. It turns out Nick does play two. So he has to calculate how many of them he wants to play around.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got some options here. And attacking is not the best because Thassa is in the way. He could get a little bit crafty, maybe sending in a lot with Troll as well. He does have Shadowborn to discard. Not sure if he has any other creatures to discard right now. But you see, he's just kind of doing the math here. Is he supposed to go for it in this situation, which is just turn Nemesis Immortals into a 10/10 and then toss it upstairs? Looks like he's going to try to cast Shadowborn Demon, however.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, there are 2 copies of Thassa's rebuff. And so it's going to attempt to shoot down that Spectre and get the job done. A Shadowborn Demon is shoots down a non-demon creature.
What's huge about that resolving is it actually turns off the Thassa here, which makes this attack also very perilous for Nick.
So Mutavault looks like it's on chump blocking duty. And Brady coming in here with a lot with Troll as well. And if Tidebinder Mage wants to trade, I'm sure that Brady would be happy, but it doesn't. So just 2 damage comes across over to Carlson, who will take a draw here. He's in a world of trouble.
Well, the problem is because Thassa's offline, it's going to be hard for Nick to survive this, to both keep dealing damage and to survive this turn.
I mean, Thassa just got turned back on because of Master Waves. So 2, 3, 4, 5 is the devotion count. 5 elemental tokens are going to come into play. The problem with that, of course, is that it doesn't actually stop the fact that Brady can just actually toss the Nemesis upstairs. As you see, he's going to quickly untap. He's going to count the creatures in his graveyard for Shadowborn Demon's trigger. And he just says, how about, with that on stack, I just throw both of these at you with Gerard, which will get the job done. So how Brady up a game here over Nick Carlson. Green-Black Dredge, an innovative little deck that people are starting to play, up a game over the rather boring Mono Blue Devotion deck.
And that's the first deck that actually, has used Gerard, and we've seen that he's been at least in that situation, he's pretty powerful. He probably requires an entire deck to be built around him to get that level of power, but certainly took a game there that it attacked on an axis that Nick really couldn't interact on. Nick had to become really aggressive because he didn't have a way to remove the Jared or to really stop it from throwing things at him.
Yeah, that's the card I actually like in this matchup a lot, I think. It's just because it's very difficult for Carlson and Mono Blue in general to get that card off of the table. And it just allows you to attack for a lot, assuming things have gone right with the dredging. And then you can close out the game as he just did there by throwing the large creatures upstairs. So even though you can't sack Gerard itself to throw it, you can throw other large things. And there is a bevy of those cards in this deck.
Yeah, looking at the sideboard, I'm not sure how many tools Mono Blue has to deal with this matchup. If Brady has a curve like he had that game, it just seems like that Carlson will get overwhelmed more often than not. He does cannonboard in more a second rapid hybridization, I suppose, just to deal with one large threat, but Brady's deck tends to make multiple large threats. I'm guessing that in most matchups, Nick needs to be fast because eventually he's going to lose control of the board.
Yeah, I think he just has to do what Mono Blue does a really nice job of, which is just curving out and then interacting just a little bit, not a ton, not trying to play a very defensive role in this matchup. You can definitely be the aggressor here and get the job done. I think that's what Carlson will probably have to do. Brady's sideboard, we saw last match. He's got a lot of anti-Mono Blue cards and 4 Mistcutter Hydras and 3 copies of Skylasher to go along with 3 Thoughtseizes, 2 Golgari Charms, 2 Shadowborn Demons, and a Whip of Erebos. Wouldn't be surprised to see those other 2 Shadowborn Demons come in here as well. It's a really good card in this matchup, even though it is expensive.
Well, one of the ways that Nick can race the Dredge deck is with Master of Waves. It's certainly his best clock in the deck. So Brady wants to be sure that when Master hits the table that he has a card that can remove it. And remember, because his deck's all creatures on the synergy plan, he actually doesn't have any removal. He has 2 Golgari Charms sideboard, and that's it. Otherwise, his only kill spell is Shadowborn Demon, as you mentioned. So, yeah, I have to think that he'll up the Shadowborn count.
Yeah, I don't really like the idea of diluting the deck with non-creature spells like Thoughtseize or Golgari Charm in this matchup. Yes, Golgari Charm is a trump to Master of Waves and can take care of it. It can also clean up a couple of other things, like a Judge's Familiar, maybe a Frostborn Weird that got a little bit too angry. But outside of that, I think that he should just, take the approach that he probably took last match, which was board in these 7 anti-blue cards and just go from there. Suit one of them with a Night Howler or just cast a really large Mistcutter Hydra, as we saw in the last match with Brady, and just try to get the job done that way. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because he's on the draw, but I think that plan is still pretty sound here.
Yeah, I think the tempo of play versus draw to me doesn't seem as relevant as the question of whether or not Brady can deal with a fast draw from Nick. If Brady can push through an early Shadowborn Demon, or if Nick doesn't have a Master of Waves, I don't see Nick dealing 20 before Dredge overwhelms him.
Yeah, that's how I kind of feel too. I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a really tough matchup for Mono Blue, honestly. They're both kind of doing the same thing, but it seems like Hal Brady's deck is actually able to do those things faster, assuming that his draw is pretty good, and he presents the larger threats.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, like, yeah, Green-Black Dredge is not playing fair. It's not paying full mana for its spells. It doesn't even care that much about its cards getting countered, and those are the things that Mono Blue, I mean, with a tempo deck like this, that's what it does. It capitalizes on mana, it capitalizes on counter spells, and Dredge is not particularly scared of either of those.
So you do see Brady on your left, former Standard Open champion. The last time we were here with Green-Red Devotion, playing against Nick Carlson, who takes a mulligan immediately, so Brady's going to take a look at his 7 cards. You see there's at least 1 land in there. We'll see a couple, too, and we'll see if he's happy, and he is happy. So this is our defending Standard Open champion looking to maybe repeat here.
Yeah, off to a good start so far. Certainly an interesting deck choice. I think a pretty powerful deck, and one that has a lot of good matchups in the field as well.
Yeah, I like this deck, and part of the reason I like it is just because it's kind of obscure, and I'm drawn to those kind of things, but it's also just really an unexplored archetype. A lot of people haven't really given it the time of day, even though Lax did have a really nice performance with it in Cincinnati. For example, last weekend in Phoenix, not really a lot of talk about the deck at all. Mono Black Devotion and Robert Burney, who is in this room doing battle, won that tournament, and that was really the talk of the tournament. It's just the fact that, you know, Mono Black wins again. Warren of the Gods hasn't really changed anything. Now, it's hard to say if that narrative is actually true or not, but...
Mono Black certainly is still a good deck, but I think, you know, there are decks like this Dredge deck, which certainly didn't exist before Born of the Gods.
18 for Brady off a Overgrown Tomb. I'm going to play an Elvish Mystic and pass it over back to Carlson, who does have a turn 2 play. It's a Tidebinder Mage to shut that down, so Brady will untap that land. He does pick up a Skylasher for the turn. Could maybe try to trap him a little bit here, as he does just casually pass the turn back.
Yeah, I mean, he also does have Grisly Salvage, but that attack from Nick, he really got punished for that with Skylasher.
Skylasher, this underplayed card that's obviously very good against Mono Blue for numerous reasons, but it doesn't surprise you too much to see Brady actually catch him off guard with that play.
Right, and that means will have access to 4 mana this turn, which could mean, I believe, well, any number of plays there. It looks like he does have a Herald of Torment and a Grisly Salvage. So he's still kind of setting up at the moment, as opposed to he doesn't have any large threats on the board yet.
Yeah, Herald of Torment is pretty appealing in this situation just because you get to block the Nightveil Spectre, or at least it doesn't get to attack, presumably. But at the same time, he might just want to continue developing his mana, as we do see a Grisly Salvage over there, the ability to bestow the Herald, and there's a Mistcutter Hydra in his grip.
Yeah, well, this is where Skylasher is still doing a great job. You see Skylasher holding off the Nightveil Spectre there with, was it 6 or 7 protection from blue creatures in Hal's deck. He's able to take a lot of the racing speed away from Nick. You've noticed that Skylasher is at its best against a blue aggro deck. It's so much of a shutdown card for that strategy.
Yeah, and the reason I like it in this deck as opposed to other decks like a Green Red Monsters-esque strategy is the fact that you can actually make Skylasher huge in this deck and kill them with Night Howler or something like that. Also, because, you know, you are probably the control deck when you're on the draw against Mono Blue. I think you can still be the aggressor when you're on the play, but on the draw, you want to try to slow them down and work your way towards a big Mistcutter or a big Nemesis Immortals, and this allows you to actually, you know, slow the game down so you can do something like this, which is cast a large Mistcutter Hydra, maybe turn that sideways, and then stay back on defense with your Skylasher.
Well, the Skylasher's done so much work here. It took out the turn 2 Tidebinder Mage from Nick, which has kept Thassa off Devotion. On top of that, it freed up an Elvish Mystic, and it's holding off this Nightveil Spectre.
This is the Master of Waves. That's going to come into play. Devotion is 5, 3 from the Spectre, 1 from Thassa, and 1 from Master itself. So 5 elemental tokens are going to come into play, but none of those are actually going to stop the Mistcutter Hydra that has been attacking. So again, Brady is executing his game plan pretty well right now. Thassa and the Nightveil Spectre are going to come in attacking. You're going to see Skylasher actually block here on the Thassa, so Brady's only going to take 2, and Carlson will be rewarded with an Elvish Mystic.
Yeah, well, I like, once again, how Carlson's playing this. He's recognizing his need for attacking above anything else. You see, removing all his blockers there just to push more damage. Well, removing his flying blocker, at least.
And Brady trying to figure out what he can get done in this situation. Moves a Skylasher over there with the mana producers, maybe saying, I have to actually hold these all back on defense, and can my Mistcutter Hydra actually get the job done, or do I have to hold that back as well? The problem here, I think, in Matthias, is that if he's holding back Mistcutter Hydra, he's probably not winning.
Well, he needs to have a 2-turn clock, right? So if he makes a Mistcutter Hydra, he has another one in his hand, so he can only swing. He could swing for 6 this turn if he wanted with pro blue creatures, and then hopefully do the rest of the damage on the following turn. you know, if he swings for 6 with his Pro Blue creatures and holds everybody back, he could be fine. He can win the next turn. He has to count how much damage he's taking, though. It looks like he doesn't have an answer for Master. So right now, it's 19 power worth of creatures on Nick's side of the board. So he's going to have to be able to deal with that.
Yeah, and chances are he won't actually have the opportunity to block Thassa as well. So you can, you know, because of the unblockable activation. So you can say that Brady is at a virtual 11 right now.
Yeah, 11, and there are 7 2-power attackers. So he's going to have to block 2 of them.
Now the question is, what is he drawing to in this situation? Again, we know he has 2 copies of Golgari Charm in his sideboard. We don't know if he brought them in or not. And then he has some number of Shadowborn Demons throughout his 75. 2 in his main, 2 in his board, and we don't know if those are in there yet as well. But it looks like he might be moving on the defensive approach this go around.
If he swings with his 2 Pro Blue guys, then he can put Nick to 6, and next turn untap and Mistcutter for 4 and swing for the lethal. That will not work if Nick plays Mutavault. But I think it's still correct to swing for 6 here. He only has to block 2 creatures, and it's likely that Nick won't swing with Master of Waves, in which case, well, maybe not. He may make Master unblockable, actually, and swing with it. So it does mean that Hal could Elvish Mystic, trade with 1, block another one with Sylvan Caryatid, go to 1 on the attack, and have enough mana to untap and Mistcutter for 4 for the exact damage.
And that's assuming, unfortunately, depending on who you're rooting for, that's assuming that Carlson has nothing to do on his turn. You know, like a Rapid Hybridization or, you know, maybe another Master Waves to pump the other elemental tokens. But it might be a situation here if you're Brady where you can't play around anything.
Right. The cards that he's worried about are a second Master. As you said, Rapid Hybridization. Because the Frog Lizard is green, it gives him a block, and a Mutavault. If Nick has none of those, actually, none of the cards in Nick's hand matter.
So there's an attack for 6. Carlson's going to go down to 10. This is a Mistcutter just for 1. Best of the turn back. How do you feel about that play?
Well, if he has a third Mistcutter, it's fine, but he's taken away his ability to win on the next turn. I don't know the remainder of his hand, but all right, and that's a Nykthos.
That's not good. Unblockable, unblockable, unblockable. Play
and it's
Master,
the second Master.
Okay.
Yeah, we said there was that small subset of cards that do matter here. Nick had one of them, and that's enough.
Nykthos actually enabling some unblockable there as well. So Carlson will tie it up here against Brady. Mono Blue Devotion and Green Black Dredge going to a 3rd game, as it did in the last round too for Hal Brady, who when we cut into his match, he was making large Mistcutter Hydras, and he did win against Mono Blue a little bit earlier, 2 games to 1. So now he gets to be the aggressor since he's on the play.
Yeah, it gives him more tempo. As we saw there, if Hal was on the play, he actually was very close to, I actually think he wins the race. He was 1 turn behind. He would have been able to have killed the next turn. So that the play versus draw did make the difference there. In the Mono Blue Devotion deck, we did see Nick have the kind of hand that he needs. A double Master of Waves hand when Hal doesn't have a Shadowborn Demon is pretty much going right according to script for Nick. And he's going to need something of about that speed, because the other cards, like the incidental aggro cards out of the Mono Blue deck, the Tidebinder Mages, the Cloudfin Raptors, the Frostburn Weirds, those aren't really good for damage in this matchup. As we saw there, Nick tried to swing with a Tidebinder Mage and was completely shut down by Skylasher.
It's funny too. Think about that game where Skylasher really blew out the Tidebinder Mage, removed some devotion. He got his Elvish Mystic back, and then there was the Thassa comes down, the Nightfell Spectre is trumped by Skylasher, and it's able to attack, and that's a game. That's still a game that Carlson won. Yeah,
I mean, I know this is true of a lot of Mono Blue Devotion games, but this matchup from the Mono Blue side is really about Thassa and Master.
Yep.
And the other cards are even more filler than they normally are.
Yeah, definitely true. Definitely true. Tidebinder Mage has a little bit more text in this matchup, which is nice for change for that card.
Yeah, your opponent's playing green, so Tidebinder Mage gets to do something, but it doesn't do damage. I think it's just a removal spell.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's rare that thing's actually ever going to be able to come in for 2 or 4 points of damage, especially with what happened in the last game, where Skylasher ate it.
I don't even swing into open mana at this point with it.
I would be very surprised if he's comfortable attacking with Tidebinder Mage at any point in this 3rd game if that does come up, which we will see in just a moment here as both players are going to lay out their opening hands. If you guys are just joining us at home, we do appreciate it. Cedric Phillips, Matthias Hunt, StarCityGames.com Open Series here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDAL for your tweets. We've been talking about Journey into Nyx all weekend long. Some other cards are being spoiled right now at PAX, so we got even more fun stuff to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. All right, so Hal on the play does not have a turn 1 mana creature. Looks like he has plenty of land.
There's a mana creature. I was going to assume he had to have one.
It looks like he has another ramp spell, so I think it's once again the double mana dork into Mistcutter Hydra plan.
Well, we saw this earlier.
Yeah, which I like.
Yep. And actually, wow, he has a
Oh.
whip of Erebos too. That's really helpful.
So, yeah, I would actually go as far as say I don't think Whip Hydra is, like, very answerable from the Mono Blue side. Like, Mono Blue, you can't race Whip of Erebos.
Yeah, this might be a very, very hard game for
Like,
Carlson to win.
if it's a 6-6 Pro Blue lifelink, like, I'm not even sure what Mono Blue does about that.
Yeah, Brady just says, yeah, I'll take one.
What it does is it plays 2 Master of Waves, and that's how you race it, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's off to a really nice start. He's got Frostmourne Weird into Thassa. And yeah, this is what we saw from Brady last time. Here's a Mistcutter Hydra for 5. And in we go. Puts you
All
down
right.
to 15.
4-turn clock has started. 4-turn clock's reasonable from Mono Blue. We'll see how much the Whip of Erebos changes things. You see shuffled to the front of Nick's hand there is Master of
Yep.
Waves.
Does he have the 4th land? That's the big question. He takes a draw. If the 4th land's a Mutavault too, would be insane.
He drew an island,
Okay.
so this is what he said. The cards that matter on Nick's side are Master and Thassa.
He has them both. 4 elemental tokens are going to come into play here. Thassa doesn't get to attack this go around, so it's just going to be an attack here for 1 from Carlson. Brady's going to go down to 18. He's going to quickly untap and take a draw. Wouldn't be surprised if he deploys the whip, and he actually has Golgari Charm in his hand
Oh,
too.
wow.
So he is in
That's huge.
the driver's seat. There is the whip.
I was gonna say if Nick has a second Master, this could be curtains for Hal, but that Golgari Charm is, boy, it's doing some heavy lifting right now.
I like Hal's play a lot right now too. I was going to mention this. I think he has to cast it now because he doesn't want to open himself up to a counterspell. And he does cast it on his main phase. What he does is he attacks first, make sure he gets his 5 points of damage. Golgari Charm's effect is symmetrical, so -1/-1 to everything.
Yeah.
So he makes sure he gets the appropriate amount of damage across, and then he kills this. But this is all right. A little fight.
Nick had the second Master.
Yeah, and now he gets 5 tokens because of Cloud from Raptor, double evolve as well. Brady's up to 23, so his life total's pretty good. As now here comes Thassa. He just needs to be able to keep pushing through damage. You see he's going to chump block immediately. He'll take a draw. It's a copy of Skylasher, which isn't bad.
Race that Whip of Erebos.
And he's up to 28 is Brady. Carlson's down to 5. He needs a Mutavault like right now.
Yeah.
Puts a top card to the bottom.
Doesn't have enough mana to Cyclonic Rift to overload a Rift.
That's another
And it's the
copy
third
of
Master
Master.
Waves.
Does that do it?
I don't think so. It's 28. It's close, but I don't think so.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
If that last card is Rapid Hybridization, then it's certain. Nope, it's
It's an island. So this is an attack. The elemental token stack for 15. Master 17. Raptor makes it 19. 19 plus 5 is 24. 25 pre-pumps with Frostmourne. He can attack for 27. But Skylasher says...
How's the 28?
Yes. Skylasher says, actually, let's slow down just a touch here if you don't mind. I think he may try to make something unblockable here. He'll show a Tidebinder Mage, and he's going to extend the hand. So Hal Brady with Green-Black Dredge. You know, Carlson had an insanely good draw for the matchup. Being on the play matters.
Yeah, I mean, that hand had that Thassa into triple Master. I mean, I guess you could fault it for not having the Rapid Hybridization, but that's about it.
Yeah, you mentioned those are the 2 most important cards in the matchup. Those are the cards able to steal the games, and Carlson was almost able to do that. And again, I think play and draw in this matchup is so huge because if Carlson's on the play there, I don't even think that